We are with Lieutenant Colonel Richard Kemp at the scene of the attack in Rehovot. Right now, because of the tremendous urgency for Lieutenant Colonel Kemp's time, I want to hand it over for the briefing. We'll speak, we'll contextualize after the fact. Lieutenant Colonel, thank you for addressing us and thank you for speaking to us.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I'm going to be a bit brief and short. Very, very tragic scene here in Rehovot. You can see behind me terrible damage. I'm pretty actually quite emotional because one of my officers, our house is right near, so she came here with me to see her parents. We're in the midst of Operation Shield and Arrow. More than 743 rockets been fired at Israel already. And again, it's not an hermetic defense. We always emphasize that. Our civilian population has been very, very disciplined. But these things happened, and we have a terrible event this evening. It started off 3 days ago, and where we decided to take action against Islamic Jihad, 3 kingpins of terrorism in the Gaza Strip that were directing activity, also in Gaza, also the rockets firing towards Israel, and also operative called Azaladin, who was trying to move rockets from Gaza to Judea and Samaria. So the dynamic of this conflict is pretty straightforward. Right now, it's focused on Islamic Jihad. This is not Hamas. Hamas aren't in yet. And again, we're talking about an organization who fires at civilians. When we go after our targets, we go after terrorists. The number 2 guy of the rocket launcher array in Islamic Jihad, Deka, he was targeted today. He was planned to be targeted 3 days ago, but because his family was with him, we waited. We're doing everything we can to minimize collateral damage. And it's important that you emphasize this to anyone you talk to. Just to give you a sort of taste of the scene, I'm actually joined here, you probably are a familiar face. My counterpart,
Dean Elston.
Dean from the police, their international spokesperson. We worked a lot together during the Ramadan, and this is an ongoing dynamic. So, thank you, Dean.
Absolutely.
Please, I'll take 1 or 2 questions, and I have to run.
Okay, Lieutenant Colonel Kemp. So we're hearing.
It's Hecht. Richard Kemp is another guy.
I apologize, Lieutenant Colonel Hecht. What we're hearing is the following: that there is going to be at 9 p.m. Israel time, 2 p.m. New York time, there's going to be a security cabinet meeting. They're going to be determining next steps of action, where this is going. Question number 1 is if you can confirm that. Number 2 is you mentioned at this point, Hamas is not involved. Do you have any sense to the contrary, or you see that seems to be the consistent approach? They've stayed on the side in this battle.
Right now, Hamas have stayed out of the conflict. Again, this is, to me, the line here is Islamic Jihad in Gaza, their leader in Lebanon driving in a Mercedes, giving them directives to go all out. And of course, Iran, who's a faction here inside the event. Hamas right now are out of it. I'm not aware of the cabinet meeting. I'm here in the field. So I've disconnected myself from the headquarters to come and give a sense and understand what's going on here and see the chaos that this rocket created.
We understand that right now.
I'll have to sign out.
Okay.
Steve, I have to sign out. I just want to thank FIDF for all your support. And God bless Israel. God bless the United States and the FIDF.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel. Right now, as Lieutenant Colonel has to go to the next situation, there are sirens all over southern Israel. We're getting reports that whether it's Sderot, at least 50 rockets were sent at Ashkelon, the major southern city of Ashkelon, and we're hearing this all across Israel. It's not a good situation. Again, to contextualize what General Padan shared with us yesterday, Hamas until this time has stayed out. That's number 1. Number 2 is that the storage in terms of the supply of rockets that Palestinian Islamic Jihad has, it's not as robust, it's not as significant as Hamas, not as significant as Hezbollah. So the question is, on their end, what kind of supply do they have? How many days can they extend this? Obviously, with the attack here that's killed the first civilian, 5 others were moderately or lightly wounded. 2 of them were a function of trauma from the attack. 2 of them, it was actual physical wounds. They're being treated. The building that Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht is standing in front of, that building, we understand from the Home Front Command, has been evacuated. It will probably have to be taken down. It's not a stable building at this point in time. And we're dealing with a number of issues. Children are not going to school throughout Israel because of the situation. People are living within proximities of bunkers. He mentioned over 740 rockets have been fired over the course of the last 3 days. 2 major commanders of Palestinian Islamic Jihad have been taken out in the last 24 hours. They've been eliminated. He just shared with us that one of them would have been eliminated at the beginning of this conflict, but they did not want to affect his family, and they waited until now. This is a tense situation because it's in the interest of Iran, it's in the interest of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, controlled by Iran, to get others involved, to expand this conflict. That's their interest. At this point, that hasn't been the case, but at this point, anything could change at any time. The rumors that he could not confirm is that there will be a security meeting, 9 o'clock Israel time, 2 p.m. East Coast time here in the United States, especially in the context of these rockets that have landed in Rehovot, as we've just seen, killing the first Israeli in this conflict, as well as Ashkelon, Ashdod, other southern cities, Sderot. Yesterday, there was a school, and no one was allowed to go to school because of the rockets. They were living in bomb shelters, but a school took a direct hit. Thank God there was no one in that school. There were no casualties or no injuries. But this is how precarious the situation is. The Home Front Command, which many of our communities, in terms of Friends of the IDF, have adopted, whether it's the Ram Battalion, whether it's the Battalion of Search and Rescue, Chilutz V'Hatzalah, where we have presentations made by those battalions in our chapters in Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, Dallas, in Washington and Atlanta over the last couple of weeks. Those brigades right now, those battalions, I apologize, they are throughout southern Israel. They're dealing with streets that are blocked off because of damage. They're dealing with communities that have taken direct hits. As of this morning, Iron Dome had a 96% efficiency. 96% efficiency is the strongest, is the greatest that it's ever had. But understand that the 4% of rockets that it's not able to either determine that they will not do damage or to take out, those 4% of rockets, who knows where they will land? And we saw just behind the Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht, we saw just behind him a building in which we've already lost 1 Israeli, 4 others injured, and a building that will now have to be destroyed because it's not stable, it's not tenable. This is the situation we're dealing with. It's an extremely precarious situation. It's an extremely tense situation. And you've got a nation right now, which half that nation is under rocket fire. It can be reached by a PIJ rocket. That's what we're dealing with. In terms of the population, you're dealing with 2/3 of the population that are within rocket range. We have been asked by the Army for a number of welfare, a number of health, a number of humanitarian needs. We've got battalions that are now being stretched and spread throughout southern Israel, throughout the southern half of the country. And we have a situation where I just want to let you know that we just received word that Colonel Elad Edri, who's overseeing the search and rescue, he is the Colonel of Search and Rescue. He is going to be joining us live in just a few seconds. In just a few seconds, he's going to be joining us live and being able to share with us the terrible humanitarian suffering and the humanitarian challenges that are facing half of the country of Israel over the course of the last 3 days. We'll be hold on, and we'll be getting that live feed as we speak. So just to review, Colonel Elad Edri is the colonel that oversees search and rescue. Many of you are familiar with the incredible job they did in Turkey. There were 38 countries that went to Turkey. 36 countries were able to save between 0 and 2 lives. The Russian search and rescue team saved 5 lives. Israel, Chilutz v'Hatzalah, who sent that mission to Israel, saved 19 lives. 19 lives were saved from the rubble. Not to mention a field hospital that treated over 500 Turks who had suffered wounds, damages as a function of that. We know what they did in Surfside. Colonel Elad Edri was with the team in Surfside. We know what they've done in Nepal, what they've done in Brazil, what they've done in Mexico City, what they've done with tsunami relief, and what they've done throughout the world. Search and rescue, who is an absolute sanctification of God's name, a sanctification of Israel, in terms of how they conduct themselves throughout the world with the humanitarian help that they provide in times of tragedy. But search and rescue is specifically being trained for scenarios like what we're dealing with. These scenarios where buildings are hit, and who knows who's under the rubble. These scenarios where buildings are hit and could collapse at any moment. These scenarios where people are trapped as a function of rocket attack and rocket damage. That is what search and rescue does, and that's what they're trained for. So thank God, over the course of the last number of decades, they have not had to engage in that activity in Israel. That's a function of Iron Dome, that's a function of David Sling, and that's a function of the IDF. But they've taken their skills and their talents, and they've used them all over the world. They've used them all over the world. Now, the Homefront Command, and just to give it from an American perspective, the Homefront Command is FEMA. The Homefront Command is the National Guard, the Coast Guard. It's the emergency reserve units of police, of the Army. It's all of that in one. When tragedies like this happen, when enemies of Israel, when enemies of the Jewish people strike, and they try to slaughter innocent humans, innocent Israelis, that's when the Homefront Command comes into action to provide people direction to hospitals, many times makeshift hospitals, to open up paths where ambulances have to traverse, soldiers have to get from one place to another, to open up these kind of paths, to clear away buildings and open up neighborhoods and save people from rubble, from under state of destruction and despair. That is the Homefront Command. And right now they have gone into action. The way that you can identify a soldier in the Homefront Command is the bright orange kumta, the beret, or in Hebrew kumta. We right now have with us Colonel Elad Edri from the field, from Rehovot. Colonel Edri, can you hear us on the feed? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Colonel Edri, first of all, we want to thank you. Thank you for being a role model to all of us, for all that you've done across the world. But now tragically, your skills, your battalion skills are being used in Rehovot. Could you share with us from the ground what you're dealing with, what the Homefront Command is dealing with, Bashetach, in the field, in the villages, towns, and cities throughout southern Israel?
Yes, well, first of all, I apologize for the noise and all that happens here, because we have a lot of firefighters and police officers and search and rescue soldiers. And we'll start with showing you what I see. Well, this is a 6 stories building in the middle of Rehovot, which very short while ago was directly hit by a missile that was launched from the Gaza Strip. It penetrated the second floor and also the first floor and then hit the ground. So this missile made severe damage to 3 different floors, and obviously made also a few people to be injured. And there is serious destruction also. And as you can imagine, we came here very fast. We brought a few search and rescue teams. The soldiers helped to evacuate the wounded. And as we speak, they are still searching for maybe missing inside this building.
The devastation that you've seen, whether it's in Ashkelon, Sderot, whether it's in towns, villages, cities, can you convey to us, to describe just the ramifications? We talked about the fact that on the one hand, the missile defense system is doing an outstanding job. It's 96% accurate, the highest it's ever been. But if you send over 750 rockets, some rockets are going to get through. Can you share with us the devastation, the trauma that you're seeing on the ground?
Well, to be honest with you, the IDF forces, and especially my brigade, my units, the message we want to bring to scenes just like this one is resilience, is hope, is strength. It's not about devastation or how do I say it? It's not something that we want to depress the population. Well, they experience here enough pain and enough fear, and I think that the IDF soldiers that are coming and searching as we speak, they give them the hope that still we are here for our people, and although it's a very negative consequence, we have the hope to save as many as we can. And although the last days were pretty tense and pretty, let's say, problematic, still the IDF is very strong for the Jewish people here, the Israeli population.
Your teams, Colonel Edri, right, obviously right now are in Rehovot. Are there any other cities your teams are operating out of?
My teams are spread all over the south part of Israel, from Be'er Sheva through Netivot and Sderot and Ashkelon and Ashdod, Kiryat Gat, and many more cities and villages. We brought a few hundred soldiers that are in the center of these all these cities I mentioned, and also reserve units that are in the center part of Israel, such in Tel Aviv, Ramat Gan, and so on.
We're reading that there's been evacuation of children, of people who are vulnerable. Is the Home Front Command involved in that evacuation?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
So we're hearing that there have been evacuation of children, of people who are vulnerable from certain areas, evacuated to other parts of Israel. Is the Home Front Command, the Picud Oref, involved in that evacuation?
Yes, we are involved with this evacuation. The responsibility to do it is of the local municipalities, so we only assist them. The idea is to take population from the Gaza Strip, from the kibbutzim and the villages that are very close to the Gaza Strip and Sderot, bring them to hotels and other places that give them the opportunity to have a break of a day or two. Playgrounds for the kids, swimming pool, good food, and yes, we're a part of it.
Your soldiers at this time consist not only of the active duty members of Chilutz V'Hatzalah, the search and rescue. I'm assuming that you probably have reservists who have been called up, who are helping in the various tasks that you have throughout southern Israel.
Yes, as I said, the forces are also based on reservists. A few hundred reservists joined the search and rescue units for the past few days. For example, at this building that I'm just standing in front of, we have 10 or 12 reservists in different occupations that came to help us, and they do a great job. Engineers, population intelligence officers, and so on.
We can't thank you enough. We really cannot thank you enough for what you're doing. Not only what you do across the globe, but now what you're doing for the people of Israel. Do you want to share with us, Colonel Edri, some last words and thoughts from your own personal perspective?
Well, I'll be happy to. Some of you came to my brigade only 2 weeks ago, and we celebrated the 75th year anniversary of the Jewish state. And although you see a bit of distraction and a bit of bad news in the television, I can assure you that our spirit is strong, our forces are ready, and we have the right tools and the right spirit to make it through also, and as always, to win. So you can count on us.
We're very proud of you, Colonel Edri. You know, we're also, we admire the optimism that you have, the strength that you have under the most difficult of times. You're really an inspiration to each and every one of us. And I happen to be part of that delegation that had the honor of spending Yom Ha'atzmaut with you on your base in Ramla, and just to see the incredible young men and young women who make up your battalion, who make up the other battalions of the Pikud Aref. We can't thank you enough, Colonel Edri. You're really a role model.
Thank you for the opportunity to share, and I hope to see you in good times. Shabbat Shalom.
Please, God, we should have peace for Israel, peace for humanity, and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Colonel. That was Colonel Edri. And again, many of you have had a chance to hear from him when it was Surfside. You've heard from him when it was Turkey. And now you're hearing from him from Rehovot. They are busy. They've got the reservists called up, and they're trying to make it as easy as possible for those who've suffered. And as you hear him, he's a voice of optimism. He's a voice of calm. He's a voice of stability. That is search and rescue, part of the greater home front command. Again, they're the ones that when you see someone with an orange kumta, bright orange beret, that's the home front command. And they're ultimately right now, as you heard, they're working with municipalities, taking people from the most vulnerable areas on the Gaza border, taking them to places like the Dead Sea, to Eilat, to places where it's a little bit calmer. We want to ask each and every one of you under these trying times to support the soldiers. You hear it. You've got battalions who are off of their bases. You've got battalions who have, whether it's hygiene needs, whether it's food needs, humanitarian needs, whether it's just basic needs in terms of shade, shelter, etc. If you care, we would be very grateful. FIDF.org/donate, FIDF.org/donate. And unfortunately today, we've had the first casualty. According to Colonel Edri, there may be a second. They're trying to find someone through the rubble in that building in Rehovot. And there are 4 others who've been injured. As we speak, and I get feeds as we're speaking with each other live, of rocket attacks in different parts of southern Israel. Please, God, the Jewish people will be safe in Israel. Israel will be strong, and Israel will overcome this as well. Again, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, they're funded by Iran. They're a puppet who are commanded by Iran. Their goal is to attack, to destroy. Their goal is to hurt, to kill, and to maim innocent men, women, and children. The strength of the IDF will stand up to them, will protect Israel, will protect all of us. Please, God, the soldiers will be safe, the civilians will be safe, and we will overcome this as well. Thank you. Thank you for joining us in this live briefing with Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht, who started off the briefing, and then with the opportunity to speak with Colonel Edri, who just joined us from the scene in Rehovot. Thank you.